Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Kmet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hi, Jason.
How's it going for you tonight? Are you getting ready for some competing Calgary team soccer action this weekend? Same time, Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. There's a lot of stuff to keep an eye on. How about you?
It's good. But I was looking when we were preparing for this episode and I did not realize that the Wild and Cavalry play at exactly the same time on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, we speculated how often that would happen, right? When we were first talking about the Wild way back when they were first announced. So be curious to see. Obviously, Cavalry's got the home game, and we'll see how the attendance is for that. Should be really good if the weather holds up. But obviously, the Wild are playing out on the East Coast, so you'll have to catch them on TV.
I might try and put it like as a small screen on my laptop during the game at Spruce Meadows. We'll see how that works.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think you'd be the only one doing that.
If you are a new listener to our podcast, Scott, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
So, as we've already alluded to, we talk about soccer in Calgary. We talk about the professional teams, those being Cavalry FC on the men's side and the Calgary Wild on the women. But we also talk about other levels of soccer in the city, including at this time of year, lots of League One Alberta discussion. And we even talk about the grassroots and minor level and basically all things related to soccer in Calgary.
And this week, our topics will include Cavalry FC. They played last weekend, their home opener against Vancouver. We'll also preview not one, but two Cavalry matches for this upcoming week. We'll preview the Wild and their match in Halifax on Saturday, as we mentioned. We'll have some League One Alberta updates, and we also have an interview this week. Scott, who's our interview with?
Yeah, we chatted with Lisa Grant, who's the executive director of Alberta Soccer. We chatted with her about League One, which is underway now, of course, and talked about some of the changes this season, some of the new teams that have joined the circuit, as well as how the playoff/postseason will look.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get to that interview in a little while. I think it's got some good updates about League One Alberta, but let's start off with talking about Cavalry FC.
Hi, this is Tobias Waszewski. You're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Cavalry had their home opener last Friday against Vancouver FC. Jason seeking their first win after a 1-0 loss in Hamilton the week before. Or was it 2 weeks before? I feel like it had been.
It was 2 weeks before, yeah, because they had that weird bye week in the second week.
Yeah, a weird bye week, you're right. But unfortunately, Cavalry couldn't get it done. Managed to escape with a point in a 1-1 tie, but for 94 plus minutes, it didn't look like Cavalry was gonna manage to come away with anything in this one.
I would say it was a bit of a surprise. With Vancouver's current form, they did not seem like they were going to be too threatening in this match, but they took the lead, in the first half. Scott, why don't you take it away? You had a chance to go to this game in person. I wasn't able to, so take it away.
Yeah, I didn't have a great view of Vancouver's goal because I was taking photos from the opposite end, fully anticipating that Cavalry was going to be on the front foot in the first half. And that was not how it went. Vancouver really took it to Cavalry in this one, had the bulk of possession and chances in the first half. Cavalry was really struggling to string passes together, and they were kind of collapsing in their attack. And about 20 minutes in, Vancouver opened the scoring thanks to a goal from Nicolas Mesquita, who's one of their new signings from Uruguay. He used to be with Vancouver Whitecaps as well as the Colorado Rapids, so some people may remember him from his MLS years. But fully deserved 1-0 lead. Callum Montgomery gave the ball away in midfield while attempting to pass out the back. Couple quick passes, and then a one-time finish from Mesquita past Carducci. So it was 1-0 at the half. Really frustrating one for Cavalry. I think their XG was like 0.06 at this point.
Scott, watching that match, it really seemed like in the first half, Cavalry had no solution for what Vancouver was doing defensively. It seemed like they were just kind of stumped were you getting kind of the same impression? Like,
Yeah.
it didn't seem like they were able to handle their game plan.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Vancouver's defenders did a really good job. I thought their left center back in particular was having a really strong game. He really managed to shut down Toby Warshevsky as well as Ali Musi a lot. In the second half, Cavalry really did pick up their play a lot, and they had a lot more chances, and a lot more of the ball was in Vancouver's half. Now, it took all the way until the 95th minute, though, before Cavalry managed to tie this one up. And a pretty familiar face was the guy who got the goal.
Yeah, Tobias Warshevsky, I was going to say pulled a rabbit out of his hat, but pretty close to that. It wasn't a real obvious moment there, but he was able to get that shot away, and it made it into that far corner.
Yeah, and I was shooting on the right side of the pitch this time, but unfortunately I did not get a great shot of his goal or of his celebration. I was kind of kicking myself after. But yeah, he really pulled it out of nothing. It was a shot from outside of the box through the legs of one of Vancouver's defenders, right in the bottom corner. Callum Irving wasn't able to get to it. Typical Warshevsky to like you say, pull the rabbit out of his hat and get a result for Cavalry, even though it wasn't the one that they would have hoped for before this game kicked off.
This would be a match where, even though they got the point and were able to sort of like get it sort of at the last minute, I don't think Cavalry was probably pretty happy with this one afterwards, I would think.
No, and that came across in the press conference. Tom Fields was the player chosen to address the media. He basically said, "We're not happy with this result. We're not happy with this performance." I chuckled because Moses from Global News asked him, "What did your coach say in the dressing room after the game?" And his reply was, "Tommy is always honest. I'll just leave it at that." No, and then Tommy came on and very similar. He said, "Look, that was not a good performance from us. The first half was terrible. We picked it up in the second half, but we have to play like that the full 90 minutes if we expect to beat any of the teams in this league." You know, Jason, this continues a really interesting phenomenon in the CPL. I don't know how many games that Cavalry have played in the month of April. We talked about this last week. They have not won a game in the CPL that's taken place in April. So their notoriously slow starts to the season seems to be continuing, because they're now, after 2 games, they've got a tie and they've got a loss.
You know, I think I said in an earlier episode that I thought if there was ever going to be a year where they could maybe break out of this funk in April, it would be this year, because getting ready for those Pumas matches and everything like that. And, you know, I guess the thing is, I thought in that Forge match, even though they lost, they played pretty well. And, you know, losing in Hamilton is wouldn't be considered a big thing per se. But yeah, when you have that Vancouver result where, you know, they were kind of a bit flat, especially in the first half. Yeah, that makes you think that maybe the trend continues for another year. But I guess we'll see. There's going to be another match to coming up this weekend, so we'll see if they can pull up 3 points this time.
Yeah, one more chance to buck this trend of never winning in April, but it won't be easy. They're going to be welcoming Atletico Ottawa to Atco Field on Saturday, as alluded to, 3 p.m. kickoff. Really strong start to the season from Ottawa so far, who've managed to hold on to a lot of their important players from last year when they had that stacked roster. But in my opinion, they've actually brought in some really good pieces to kind of complement the likes of Balu Tabla and Manny Aparicio and Amir Didic.
Yeah, they brought in Brent Levis, right? And he was playing in USL for the last at least couple of years. I maybe even more than that, but a couple of years for sure. And the other player we were talking about a little bit before was Noba Atene.
Yeah, Noah Botney from York, who's already scored a goal for Ottawa. I think it was a winning goal against his former club.
Yeah, he was one of the real standouts last year on that York side. So yeah, they seem to have gotten stronger. They're 2-1. They're tied for first place. They're strong start for them for sure. So it's, you know, on paper, they're a much tougher opponent than Vancouver was. So, but, you know, that's why they play the games, right?
Exactly. So very excited to watch this one and see how Cavalry does against a team that's definitely in form with a new coach. So from Cavalry's perspective, everybody should be fully fit except for a couple of players who are, I think, still out injured. Two from last week being Eric Kobza and Diego Gutierrez. And then we have a question mark around Jesse Daly missing this one.
Yeah, he was out last week. I don't know how significant his injury is. But I guess it's kind of par for the course. You're always going to have a couple players injured. So, but yeah, we've got that match on the weekend, and then we get a second match this week for a rare weekday night match.
Yeah, this is a quick turnaround for Cavalry. They'll be back at Spruce Meadows on Tuesday evening to open their Canadian Championship run against Edmonton Scottish. This will be the first time that a League One Alberta team has competed in the Canadian Championship. And while we can't really evaluate Scottish because they haven't played any games yet this year, Jason, you did compile a list of players who we may see suiting up for the Scottish next week.
Yeah, this is my favorite thing to do, is to go try and figure out who could be on the team. I wrote out the list here in advance. There's quite a bunch of players on here, isn't there? I don't know if all of these players are going to play, but I think it's reasonable to assume that a good chunk of them are likely to be in the lineup.
Yeah, this is kind of cool how many names we recognize, right? But Jose Hernandez, who is a former Cavalry player from back in 2020 and 2021. I think he was also with Pacific, I want to say, before that.
He is from Edmonton, so he's been out of the league for a couple years, though, now.
But other than that, another Edmontonian, Marcus Velado-Tsegay, formerly with FC Edmonton, also a star for the University of Alberta. Rodane Cato, we think, is on this team. He was Cavalry's U Sports draft pick in 2024. Michael Cox, which is an interesting one I didn't know. He's a Calgarian, formerly with FC Edmonton, spent time overseas. Tomi Amiobi, who's English, brother of former Premier League player Shola Amiobi. He was also with FC Edmonton and retired there and has stayed and now works as a lawyer. And a couple others as well, Jason. You did a really good deep dive into this.
When you look at a couple of these players, there are a couple of players that I think I kind of at least want to talk about. Like Rodane Cato, I think he showed pretty well last year playing for Calgary Foothills. He tried out for Tacoma, whether they're in MLS Next Pro or USL, whatever they're in now. It's basically the Sounders reserve team. So he definitely has pro aspirations. He didn't make it, but from what I can tell, he's going to be on this Scottish roster. And Paul Hamilton is the guy who, from that sort of time frame of players in Calgary, he was like one of the big players, right? Like he had a significant career for FC Edmonton. He played in Carolina in the NASL, and now he's basically, I think he's the technical director of Scottish. He's one of the big guys in the on-field product, and he's not that old yet. I think so. He's certainly into his 30s, but a player with some Calgary roots with a lot of skill, and it'd be kind of fun to watch him at Spruce Meadows. I have a feeling it's going to be a big kick for someone like him and Michael Cox, for example, a couple of Calgarians coming to play back home again.
Yeah, it's a cool story, isn't it? Other names you've written down that we might see for Scottish, the Lamb brothers, those being Sam and Matt. And then we got a question mark next to Connor James, the former FC Edmonton goalkeeper. So could be a really interesting reunion for a lot of these players who used to be in the CPL before FC Edmonton folded. So a bit of a battle of Alberta, Jason. We haven't seen one of those at Spruce Meadows in, I think it's been almost 3 years now?
Yeah, pretty much. And it should be fun. And the one thing about this match I just want to mention is, this is part of the Canadian Championship, and the winner of this match will play the winner of Pacific versus Vancouver FC. So when we interviewed Tommy Wheeldon Jr., he made a comment about the pathway in the Canadian Championship being favorable. And I kind of would agree with that. Right now, the way the bracket is set up, TFC and Montreal are on the other side of the bracket. So you're going to avoid them potentially all the way to the final if it came to that. And on this side of the bracket, the next match would be Pacific against Vancouver FC, which would be a winnable game. And then the semifinal would, most likely be the Whitecaps. So when Tommy mentioned that, I thought, well, that sounds like a cool possibility. But when you look at the draw, it's maybe not as big a leap as you might think
to make the final. No, and we know that Cavalry has had favorable results against all of those teams, including the Whitecaps. So I know it's a big, I don't want to say it's a priority for the club this year, but they've talked about it a lot, is how they want to be the first CPL team to win the Canadian Championship. And I think, has a CPL club been in the final of the Can Champ yet?
Wasn't Forge in it that pandemic year, I think?
Yeah, I think I don't want to say for sure, but that does sound right. So maybe, they want to go a step above that. But but I guess it's not a foregone conclusion that they're going to beat Edmonton Scottish. We've seen the League One teams upset the pros in the past. I don't know what the crowd will be like on a Tuesday night with semi-pro opposition, but excited to see that game regardless.
I would think that we might even see a couple of Cavalry players that don't see a lot of time on the pitch. Like, who knows, maybe this could be finally the chance for us to see Joe Holiday play in goal. He's been with the club for a couple years now, and he still hasn't appeared in a match yet. So maybe this will be the chance playing. He's from Edmonton, playing against a hometown team of his. That'd be kind of cool.
Hi, this is Grace Doherty, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, Scott, let's talk about the Calgary Wild. We talked about their first game last week when they played on the Wednesday night, and then they didn't play over the upcoming weekend there. But their next match is this weekend on Saturday. They're going to Halifax, and they're going to play at the Wanderers grounds.
Yeah, they're going to take on the Halifax Tides, and this is actually going to be the Tides' first ever game. It'll be a big occasion for them. I'm sure there's going to be a big crowd, and it's going to be an exciting day. That'll be the second time that Calgary Wild's opponent will be playing their first ever game. So interesting backdrop for that. Hard to say, obviously, since they've never played, what the Tide are going to look like, but we highlighted a couple of players that a lot of listeners will probably recognize, the main one being legendary goalkeeper Aaron McLeod.
42 years old, still playing pro, and I think she's as close to probably, behind Christine Sinclair and a couple other players, like as well-known a Canadian women's soccer player that there is out there. She's been a pretty constant presence for a lot of years.
Yeah, and another player we've I think mentioned on our podcast once before, Jason, is Sayorla Miller, who is a native of Halifax, but has played for Calgary Foothills in UWS in 2022. She also played with the University of Memphis Tigers for 4 years, alongside Calgarians that we've had on the podcast, including Grace Doherty, who she'll be going up against, of course, with Grace being on the Wild, as well as Maya Jones.
That's kind of a cool connection there. There have been some players that have come from far outside Alberta to play for Foothills and UWS over the years, and she's one of those players. So yeah, cool to see. She's been playing in Iceland, I think, most recently as a pro. So big battle between her and Grace Doherty, I would think, this weekend.
Yeah, and I think people involved with Foothills Soccer Club will probably be cheersing when they see those two face each other. And I would expect Grace to play. I don't know about Sarah Miller. I don't know if she's expected to play or not, but Grace seems like she's going to be a pretty key player for the Wild based on how much of the ball she got.
So as we mentioned earlier, that match will be on TSN. I think that one's on TSN 1, and the Cavalry match is on TSN 3 at exactly the same time, 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, so flip a coin or get the dual screen going like you're going to be doing. I know that I'll be shooting photos for at the Cavalry game, but excited to catch the Wild match afterward. Last few things to mention before we move on from the Wild segment. In terms of 3 stars of the week for the Northern Super League inaugural week, Jason, Maggie Doherty Howard managed to crack that list.
Yeah, she was the 3rd star. I guess they're pulling this sort of from hockey tradition, because I don't really associate this as a traditional soccer thing, but yeah, they announced the 3 stars of the week, and she got 3rd. So kudos to her.
And then another a player from Calgary, but who does not play for the Wild, was also named NSL Rookie of the Week, and she's a player we've talked about on this podcast quite a bit.
Yeah, Kaylee Hunter. I didn't actually see the highlights of the AFC Toronto match, but yeah, I heard rave reviews from a couple people I've been following along with online. So she did come into the match as a substitute, and I guess she did make a pretty significant impact.
Sounds like it. Yeah, I also am in the same boat. I caught a few highlights here and there on social media, but everywhere I looked, it seemed like she had a pretty good cameo.
Hi, this is Miguel Da Rocha, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So before we run our interview with Lisa Grant, we can chat briefly about the League One Alberta season kicking off last week. We saw Rangers, one of the new clubs joining League One Alberta this season, travel up to Edmonton to face BTB. On the men's side, Rangers drew 1-1 thanks to a goal from Abel Nasibu, who's another Mount Royal University player who is on the Rangers now. And then on the women's side, it didn't go quite as well. The Rangers lost 3-0.
Yeah, so I guess it was a good way to start off the season. And, we're going to see some matches. I guess it's going to be next weekend. No matches this weekend, but lots of roster movement, lots of things going on. But to sort of get us a bit of a preview of the League One Alberta season, we were able to interview Lisa Grant. She's the executive director of Alberta Soccer.
Right on. So let's run that conversation now. I'd like to welcome Lisa Grant to the podcast. Lisa is the executive director of Alberta Soccer, and I believe this is the first time she's come on our podcast. Lisa, thank you for coming on our podcast this week.
Thank you for having me.
So we're speaking to you as we kind of enter the third year of League One Alberta, second official competitive season. How do you feel the league has achieved expectations in the initial 2 years?
I think the league has done a great job. It's really strong collaboration between the clubs and Alberta Soccer. The clubs have jumped on board. They've worked hard around the game day standards. And, we got the league up and running in 45 days. And I think it's just a great place for players to compete. And now we have opportunities to go to the Canadian Men's Championship.
This year, there have been some teams added, most notably, in Calgary, a couple new clubs, longstanding clubs in the Calgary area, but they've joined the league. Do you want to talk to us about the new teams that have joined this year?
Yeah, so we have two new teams coming in both the men's and the women's teams. We have the Calgary Villains and the Calgary Rangers. We haven't seen the Villains play yet, but the Calgary Rangers were part of our showcase game that opened the season, and they tied BTB in the men's game. It was really exciting. They had about 2,000 fans out, so I think they'll be great additions to the new season.
Yeah, that's a great opening game crowd. Wow. Let's talk about some format changes this year. I believe there are some changes in terms of there's a playoffs and then there's qualifying for, how does qualifying for the Canadian Championship next year work?
So we're actually still working on that. We're not sure if it's going to be a playoff or the league final. I should know that by the end of the week. We had a little bit of difficulty on the women's side as they go to the Interprovincial Championship, which we're hosting in Sherwood Park this year. So we'll have that determined at the end of the week and then move the teams forward. We want it done before everybody starts playing.
But right now, I guess I just want to follow up on that one just for a sec. So as it stands right now, though, there are, is it 9 teams total? So to start with, in the regular season, everyone's playing each other twice, like a home and away. And that's kind of where the regular season schedule is set up, at least at this point?
Yeah. Yeah, in the Calgary Wild, this year will just be an exhibition series for them. They won't actually be vying for the Women's Interprovincial.
And yeah, because isn't that sort of the same with the Cavalry team? They can't really technically win it. Is that right? So
yeah, that's correct.
The first match had a really great attendance, a couple thousand you're mentioning. What are the strategies this year that you're planning on to attract fans, spectators, broaden the appeal of the league in general?
So what we did this year is we hired Final Third, who also works with League One Ontario and League One BC. And that just gives us more capacity on the social media side, the storytelling with the various teams. So rather than just one staff person looking after it, we've got them assisting us, as well as we've planned each club gets a highlight game or highlight weekend match, which we're doing full streaming, social media around it, player interviews. And again, like just heightening more visibility by streaming, social media, and promoting it on our YouTube.
Lisa, how closely has Alberta Soccer been looking at the other League Ones in Canada? And what kind of collaboration or guidance do they provide? Because they're a bit older.
Yeah, they've actually been great. Like when we were granted the ability to start League One, we actually got it up running in 45 days, which was a huge feat. Dino Rossi from League One Ontario, League One Canada has been a great guide, helps us with any issues that we have, any questions on requirements. And BC Soccer as well lent us their operating manual, which we used that to develop our first operating manual. So both leagues have been great to get us up and running.
I want to actually touch back on something you mentioned a little bit earlier about the Women's Interprovincial Championships. So it's going to be held this in August in Sherwood Park?
Yeah, we're hosting August 7th to 10th in Sherwood Park at Emerald Hills. It'll be a great facility for the event. We'll be doing the streaming, adding some added activities around it as well.
Lisa, we've alluded to the Canadian Championship, and we're going to see on the men's side Edmonton Scottish taking on Cavalry, which is going to be huge for the league. Can you talk a little bit about why that's such a big game for League One Alberta?
Well, it's it'll be on April 29th at Cavalry's. Again, it's Alberta against Alberta. We're planning to maybe have some other matchups between Cavalry's second team and Scottish as well later on in the league. But this is a level that Alberta hasn't been able to compete at before. So I think it's a great opportunity for players to see where they can go with a game of soccer.
Can you share with us sort of expectations for growth in the league for the next few years? Like what you're expecting, like just sort of in a general sense, like how this project is going to, how you expect this project to continue to evolve and build?
I think the biggest thing is we're just trying to build our capacity to give the game more profile. And again, it's largely around the social media and communication and streaming of the games. That's where we're looking to expand versus more teams. We just want to deliver a really quality event and something that the kids can come out and enjoy. I mean, that was a great thing last Friday. There's tons of little kids at the game seeing the players in the league. That's what we're focusing on, is quality and standards.
Is there anything else the upcoming League One season that you want to highlight before we end our call?
I think I said like the Interprovincial Women's holding that in Sherwood Park will be, a great event, especially now that we have the Calgary Wild. Again, getting young players out to the games to see where they can go in the soccer system is just amazing that we can actually do it here at home.
That first match was broadcast on YouTube. Is that going to continue to be a thing right now? Like we're going to see regular matches on YouTube like going forward?
Yeah. So some will be video uploads as per like the VO cameras. But then, like I said, we have our highlight games that we're doing with every club, which we're actually as staff are doing those. We're bringing out our cameras and doing the interviews, the streaming, play-by-play. So it's just like a higher quality of what we did last year. And it'll all be on YouTube. I think the only other thing, we do have a partner. Our preferred charity is Alberta Dreams. So we also had them out at the opening game, and we're looking for, league support, people to support the charity that delivers dreams to sick kids. And they're a great partner with League One as well.
Is that an Alberta-based charity?
Yes, it is. It used to be the Old Rainbow Society.
Okay. Well, thanks again for the conversation today. We really appreciate your available answers to our questions.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again to Lisa Grant for joining us on the podcast today. Scott, anything in the interview that you kind of want to go over? There are a couple points I think I kind of wanted to sort of follow up on.
Definitely two things stuck out. One being that the Interprovincial Women's Tournament is going to be held in Sherwood Park this year. That was the one that took place in, was it Montreal last year?
It was Hamilton last year. They played at Hamilton Field or Hamilton Stadium or whatever you call it.
Yeah, in Hamilton Stadium last year. My apologies. And then that's pretty exciting. That's not far from Calgary, obviously. And then the other thing that stuck out was the crowd size of the BTB Rangers games. According to Lisa, those games drew 2,000 fans, which is a phenomenal turnout, in my opinion.
Yeah, that we didn't ask her as a follow-up question on there, but that could be the biggest crowd ever for a League One Alberta match, as far as I know. I can't think of any that have come close to that.
Yeah, me neither. If that's what Edmonton is doing for their games, we have to step up in Calgary. Make sure to get out to some League One games this season because it's great soccer. As we've talked about some of the players on Scottish, there's lots of former professionals and lots of players who are knocking on the door of professional careers. So it's going to be an exciting League One season with more clubs and teams than last year. So make sure to get out to the games when they start.
Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check out our website at yyscsoccer.com, where you can look through our episode archive, and you can find other options to listen, including our YouTube channel. We also have links on there so you can buy Scott's book online. You can leave us a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website. You can also interact with us on social media, such as Blue Sky, Instagram, or Twitter X, where our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.